You're listening to the Electronic Media Collective Podcast Network. Yeah, it's a mouthful. For more great shows like the one you're about to enjoy, visit electronicmediacollective.com. And now, our feature presentation.
In a world where film studios have pillaged every young adult novel, DC'd every comic book series, and Frankenstein every silver screen monster in search of the next movie mega franchise. Two nerds, two movies, one cinematic universe.
This is Jasper.
And this is Randy.
We watched two movies.
Woo! They're going to amp you up.
This episode, we're talking about Hardcore Henry.
And Crank, High Voltage. Man. Okay, these movies. Wow. So how this double feature came together was I had watched Hardcore Henry. It just hit Netflix, I think, what did it, last month? It hit Netflix?
Yeah, I think so.
And I was like, I have to talk about this movie with someone. Jasper, we have to do this movie. And so then naturally I was like, what's another just insane over the top action movie that this can be paired with? And instantly the Crank movies popped into my mind. And of the two Crank movies, I think High Voltage is more insane. So that's why we went with that one. Which one do you want to jump into, man?
Well, let's go right for the one that I like the most, which was Hardcore Henry. So with that, this one was made in 2015. It is directed, I'm going to murder this name, but it is Ila Nashuler, or Aya Nashuler. It stars Shartlow Copley as Jimmy and Haley Bennett as Estelle, which is weird because I thought her name was Eve through the whole movie. And then Tim Roth, bunch of names I can't pronounce. Danila Kozlovsky, and he's, I don't know. There's a bunch of names. The writers were Ila Nashuler and Will Stewart, additional writing.
What's this movie about, Jasper?
It is. Henry is resurrected from death with no memory, and he must save his wife from a telekinetic warlord with a plan to bioengineer soldiers.
Yeah. The director of this, I might have some of my facts a little wrong, but what I know of this is the director had made a music video that went viral several years ago. I'm sure you've seen it, Jasper. It's all first-person view. It's like just crazy action sequence. Pretty sweet. And then, I can't remember who it was, but apparently someone approached him and was like, you should make that a feature-length movie like that or something. And that's, I guess, what got the ball rolling. And they did it. And this is it. This is the movie. Watching it, like I said, last month or maybe the month before, whenever it hit Netflix is the first time I'd watched it, because I remember seeing the trailers for it. I really wanted to see it, and then I don't know what happened. The best way I can describe this movie, and this is, I'm sure, been used to like as a criticism of it, but I don't mean it as a criticism. This is like Video Game the movie, but in the best way.
You're right. The way I had it in my head, even though I hate that franchise now, is it's like watching someone play through the campaign of Call of Duty.
Okay.
You know, that's how I felt this movie went.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, and you can't help it. Just because a POV doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a video game thing, but so many games are first-person view. Specifically, they're usually shooters because people like to shoot things, apparently. First-person, we don't need to get into that whole rant. Do we, Jasper?
No. It's not an argument I would feel like starting.
First person shoot. Jasper is gets the unfortunate end of like 3 a.m. rants from Randy when he's like, "Hey, check out this cool video game trailer." Oh, really? Well, this is what's wrong with society, Jasper.
I call them Randall rants. Randall rants.
It even happens in messages. So anyway,
you proved a point, though. I'll give you that.
Yeah. But at the same time, like, I love me some GTA, so whatever.
Yeah, but that's more, what is that called? A satire.
It is.
Actual life, that it's almost disgustingly accurate to real life when it's supposed to be a satire.
It used to be escapism. Now it's more simulator than anything.
Right?
But so, you know, naturally it's going to bring that comparison. But honestly, beyond just the obvious comparison of like a first person shooter, I watched this twice. The second time I watched it with Melanie, and it didn't hit me until the second time. I'm like, the first thing he does is a fetch quest. Like, this is Video Game the movie. The little guy, his buddy, Jimmy, I think it was, pops up on his little phone in such a way that, like, I don't know, making Henry not speak, I think was kind of brilliant. Because it works in the same, like, along with the same logic as making the main character of video games not speak a lot of times. Because then, like, they have your voice.
Yeah, then you think they talk as you.
Yeah, but you know, the guy will just randomly pop up on the phone, and there it is. It's almost like a little a HUD pops up, and he's like, "All right, you got this thing. Now you need to meet me over here," and it shows it on the location on the map, and I'm like, this is a video game. He's just giving him missions and fetch quests and stuff. But for me, I loved it. I thought that was great. Like, that's not a criticism on my behalf. I think that's hilarious, and I think it works, and it's appropriate because you don't need a big story. That's not what it's about. It's literally supposed to just be visual, visceral insanity. And it's like, well, how do we string this together? Well, how do video games string the same thing together? And that's what they did. I think it works great.
Yeah, I think I was kind of laughing at that GPS thing too, because I was waiting for like the little window to pop up. Would you like to fast travel? You know, and then he just like teleports and goes the other way.
Fortunately for us, it does fast travel because then it'll just cut.
Yeah, but like you said, I liked the video game aspect, and like even that thing. Oh yeah, now meet me over here. That immediately felt like GTA, where they call you on the phone all the time.
Let's go bowling, cousin.
Cousin, you like to go bowling?
Speaking of Russians, like a lot of the crew here was Russian. Anyway,
that's also the cool thing. The opening scene with that team busting into the room. That was actually a Russian SWAT team. Like the director wanted it to look so real that he actually hired a SWAT team to do that.
Really?
That intro. Yeah.
Interesting.
That's why they say it looks like they actually know what they're doing. They actually told him that, you know, there was 2 people in this room, and they didn't really give him any other information other than that.
And of course, spoilers. We always spoil the stuff we talk about, and we're just gonna. I think we'll end up jumping around a little bit. Since we're there at the SWAT team scene, that's where we get introduced to the villain, who has telekinetic abilities, and that's never explained. It's just a given. Like, yeah, this guy can do this stuff. How do you feel about that?
With things like that, I usually get hung up on it. There was so much going on in this movie that I never really cared after like a couple of times I seen him. I was like, yeah, whatever.
I almost like it when they don't explain certain things like that. They don't explain it. And maybe Metal Gear Solid does explain it, but to me, I'd seen this guy and I was like, why is he like that? And as the movie went, I'm like, he's just Psycho Manus. It doesn't matter why he's like that. He's the boss. He's the boss character. He's the villain. He has powers. Accept it, because this is video game logic, you know?
Did you realize when we first met him in the movie that, I don't know if it maybe was the way I was looking at the screen, but you see he like looks off to the side of the guy's, the main character's head?
Yeah. Is he blind?
I was wondering or something, because I saw the mask that he's wearing that has the GoPro on it, and the GoPro's like across his mouth. Mm-hmm. So I was at first thinking maybe he's looking down at the camera, but then it would still be at his face this way.
He keeps looking off to the side. And to me, I was like, that seems like blind person body language, to where he's talking to him, but just like intentionally not like looking directly at him, looking off to the side. Because every other character looks directly at you, the viewer, looks directly into the camera.
That's what I thought. Is Jimmy looks right at him.
Yeah, yeah.
It's weird though, because when he later records that message to Henry, he's looking right at the camera. So I don't know.
You know, and even later when it's Estelle is her name.
Yeah, but he calls her Eve.
Okay,
that's what I thought. Estelle was a weird name, but
is it? Does he call her Eve?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll call her Eve.
Or do I get that mixed up? I might have got that mixed up with Crank.
Oh, is that the other?
Because her name's Eve. Yeah.
Oh, you did then. You did. Okay.
But I thought he called her Eve. I don't remember Estelle, or maybe he never said her name, but whatever.
That could be. Okay, well, Estelle. There's only one main female character in this movie, so when Henry and Estelle are, after my favorite sequence of the movie, they're in that van, and the bad guy shows up on the screen inside the van, but he's outside in a car. I noticed through the screen, even though he wouldn't be able to see where they're at, he looks at them in the scene. You know what I mean? Even though like he's on the monitor, when he's talking to like Henry, he looks at Henry and then looks back at the other chick. And I was like, that's fun and clever. And it honestly doesn't make sense because he's looking into a camera, but I kind of love it. But also then like, so can he see? Because like there, he can obviously look directly at him. I don't know. I thought that was weird. But that SWAT scene, they don't use his powers a whole lot, but I love that he lifts the one guy up, and he doesn't just like use his telekinetic powers to kill the scientist guy. Like, you know, he's a red shirt basically. He's barely in it. But he lifts the guy up in the air, and it establishes that, oh, this villain has powers. And then he takes his knife out and just runs up and just stabs the guy while he's like hovering in the air. And I'm like, what a fun and ridiculous use of the powers, just to like lift a guy up just to run up and stab him a bunch.
It's like, let me bring you to like eye stabbing level. Like I don't have to like lean down and stab you.
Yeah, forget the stabbing down. That's too much work. I like to stab up.
Yeah. What was it? I think right before that, he like shakes the guy's hand or something. He's like, "Hey, nice to meet you."
Oh yeah, he's
like,
being all nice to him. It also establishes that like it takes something out of him because he gets a nosebleed or something. Yeah.
He's 12. He's 11's brother.
What?
From Stranger Things.
Oh, he's 11's brother.
Yeah, he's 12 or 10. They actually said in one of the trivia things was that someone was watching this in the theater, got dizzy on the balcony of the theater, and almost fell off the side, but they hit the wall because they tried to get up and like walk out.
If you have motion sickness issues, this is going to make you puke instantly. But one thing that I was super impressed by is even though it's first person view, he's doing rolls and jumps and getting thrown around and knocked off of bridges. The action is never, ever confusing to me. You'd think it would be easy for your location, your sense of where this character's still in video game mind, where your character's at, but your sense of where Henry's at, where the action's happening, you'd think it'd be easy for that to get jumbled around if you're literally throwing a dude with a camera strapped on him around and doing rolls. But the action is super clear the entire time. It's just easy to follow. And that's one thing I was incredibly impressed by. When he gets knocked off the bridge, because when they escape that apparently Air Fortress lab thing, he gets knocked off the bridge, which looks great. It's a great stunt. But he even does like some flips and stuff. But I mean, technically it's disorienting, but you don't get lost in like location. And when crazy stuff's happening, and I never felt like I was struggling to make sense of what was happening and where, and you know, they did it very well.
With the way they did it too, is like when he got thrown off the bridge and then he's like hiding behind the cars, you had like the adrenaline rush from like you're hiding from him.
He gets hit by cars and knocked around, and yeah, it's good. It never feels messy. We'll get into this in the next movie where it feels messy because the camera work is all over the place. And Hardcore Henry never feels that way to me. There's some great set pieces, and I want to get to that later. But let's talk about the violence, because this movie is upfront. The title sequence is incredibly kind of gruesome. I was a little bit like, oh no, what's this? Where it's like slow motion, just acts of violence, like dude getting stabbed through the neck with a knife and SWAT guys getting shot in the eye, and just the getting stabbed with a knife and then ripping up through the torso. And it's all like super beautiful, super slow motion visuals and incredibly gory and violent. And I'm like, oh, wow, what is this?
The one with the knife where it slowly goes through the neck and then comes out.
The other side,
I was like, what the crap? And then the bullet going through the head, and it was like going through the. I've never seen anything like that before watching this. And that's the opening title sequence. I was surprised by it, but I knew right away as soon as that started. I'm like, I don't think this movie did well. I guarantee it probably didn't do very well. Apparently, it made its money back. I'm looking at the numbers now. The budget was $10 million, according to the moviedatabase.org, but it brought in just over $14 million. So I guess, it made its money back and then some, but this actually got a wide release, and I don't think it did as well as they'd hoped. But after seeing that first opening sequence, I know why.
Like that kind of ultra violence doesn't go over well with the mainstream audience. I'm fine with it. I like horror movies and stuff, but I was shocked, and it did make me a little nervous as to like, oh, what is this gonna be? You know?
I was like, this movie is gonna be like they're gonna kill people like this. He's gonna like stab someone. They're gonna slow mo it, and you know.
And there is some gruesome stuff to it. The one guy, I don't know what kind of gun. Somebody's like sniping them with a small cannon or something. So the first fetch quest where he's trying to get the battery from the one guy, he's got to like rip his heart out and then get the battery out from his chest. Mm-hmm. When that guy they're out in public fighting, and all of a sudden the dude's head just blows up in his face. And it's extreme, but it's not as bad as the title sequences had me like thinking it was going to be.
That exact moment, I actually jumped because I didn't think the dude's head was going to come off. It was just like his chin was left.
The violence is so over the top. It's humorous. The movie itself is a series of set pieces. The story, I know you said the story, but I have this bird. Okay, this is a total aside. Every day, at least once, sometimes twice, there's this little bird flies into my freaking window. Every day. It's like
flies into it, like bam,
boom. Yep, flies right into it every day. It's like it was there yesterday. It's gonna be here today. Where are you trying to go, little bird?
You should open it and see if he just flies into the room.
He probably would. That I'll have a freaked out little bird in my house. Anyway, but yeah, so this is like whatever. Henry is essentially he wasn't dead, but basically he's a cyborg brought back to life by his wife, and then basically it becomes your princess is in another castle. Like she's got to save his wife. There is a twist, and I do appreciate the twist given that they've used the whole motivation of this character, the whole like setup of the plot is basically damsel in distress, go save this woman. They then throw a nice twist on that at the end. So he's trying to rescue his wife from the villain. He's got her, and it basically goes from set piece to set piece, and pretty much every action sequence, every set piece, for the most part, he gets a new Jimmy, which sounds weird to say it like that, but he's got this guy, this buddy, that keeps showing up and then dying and then showing up again, only in a different costume, basically. At one point, he's homeless Jimmy. Another point, he's like stoner, kind of like nom vet Jimmy. And then there's a big action sequence, and then it dies down just long enough to like transition into another action sequence, and that's pretty much the entire movie. It does thread plot through, but it's essentially, as you might expect, a series of action sequences taken to the extreme. So I figured we'd talk a little bit about the action sequences. What were your favorite moments, your favorite set pieces?
The whole airship bridge, or the airship and then falling to the bridge was kind of cool. Mm-hmm. The one I really liked was when the tank showed up.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say this too, is all the Jimmy deaths were like amazingly put in there.
Oh, they're so
like
good.
When the tank shows up, he's just gone.
The first Jimmy death is shocking because he's just driving, and you're like, okay, here's this guy. He's befriended this guy. He's gonna help him, and all of a sudden, just like a bullet from wherever, just boom, and Jimmy's face explodes, and they crash the car. That's the first time it happens. You're just like, oh, I guess not, Mm-hmm. And he just established the countdown, the timer. There's got to be a time limit, right? But then Jimmy shows up later as a homeless guy, and he gets toasted. And then he shows up again, and oh yeah, it's crazy.
Because at first I didn't know what was going on, and I'm like, what? Because every time one Jimmy died, the phone would start ringing again. He's like, oh, come over here now, Man, watching him get torched was pretty crazy too. But I was like, how is this dude alive still? Like, at first I thought he was the same guy, but it's the avatar system.
Yeah, I mean, you don't find that out till towards the end. Not the very end of the movie, but towards the end, it gets revealed what the deal is. Some of my favorite sequences, I think, it's so ridiculous, and it was interesting watching this movie with Melanie and seeing how she reacted to certain things, because I don't think she liked this sequence at all. I loved it, though, because it was so ridiculous. The motorcycle sequence, where where he hops in with Vietnam vet type Jimmy, and he's in the little sidecar on the motorcycle with the like Gatling gun. As soon as the motorcycle, they showed the motorcycle, it had the sidecar and then something on the front of it covered up. I was like, that's a minigun. That's a Gatling gun. And of course, as soon as they're on the road, he whips it off and there it is. And I'm like, this movie. It's basically them fighting a bunch of they're hauling down the highway or whatever. And there's a bunch of the enemy vans, the enemy organization vans, black vans, racing them and whatever. So they're taking the vans out, and some of the van crashes are good. Some of them are super kind of CG-ish, and they don't look bad, but you can tell in the motion, whatever. I can look past it. But he's just mowing the vans down with the Gatling gun. What really sold it to me, though, was they're behind a van. They're shooting it. The back doors fall down. They take the motorcycle, drives up through the back of the van the whole time, just blasting the dudes, and then drives out through the front windshield of the van, just straight up, just tears through the van. There's no way that could possibly happen, but it was so awesome. It was so over the top and ridiculous. I had to pause the movie and laugh and then rewind it and watch it again. But Melanie couldn't stand it. That part happened. She's like, no. And I'm like, of course not. But they did it, and it's amazing. She did not dig it, but I loved it. That happened. There's a guy hanging off after that he loses the Gatling gun. He ends up jumping onto another van. He jumps off onto a van. I think that's when, no, that Jimmy doesn't die, but he goes off the road. So Jimmy's out of play for now. But he's got a grenade. He throws the grenade down into the van, basically does a rocket jump. As soon as it blows up, he jumps up. He's flying through the air, and then he comes down and conveniently lands on the motorcycle of one of these chicks that they're traveling with. What is this?
Yeah,
I loved it.
My thing too, I don't think you see she's in the back of a semi, isn't she?
Yeah, the wife.
Yeah. But at first, he's just mowing these vans, and I'm like, did you check to make sure she's not in any of these?
Because they said she was in the back of a van. They didn't say which one. And yeah, they're just exploding these vans and sending them off the road. I had the same thought. But then there's a bigger van. There's the boss van. It's the boss fight van.
The one with the health bar, that's gold up top.
Yeah, exactly. You got to knock that one down 3 times before it's actually done. Right. It is each action sequence is at a crazy level, and there's usually some type of boss fight almost.
That leads up to one of my favorite scenes was when the World War II or whatever Jimmy uses the rocket launcher down the alley.
That's a bit later. Yeah, that's leading up to the big climax, and that's out of nowhere because there's the big awesome sequence. It's revealed that Jimmy has this avatar system because he's really paralyzed. And of course, the World War II Jimmy is refers to him as the cripple, which oh God, we'll get back to it. But anyway, the sequence you're talking about, it's just there. It doesn't have to be there because they leave there, they're driving, and the whole thing is they're going to drive to the big boss level, the final stage. But they randomly stop somewhere to destroy some enemy vans and stuff. And yeah, they're just casually shooting a rocket launcher down an alley at these vans coming at him. Having fun. The
thing that sold me on that is he moves his right foot behind his left foot, in a desperado.
No, he's doing a fancy pose. Yeah.
And then you're boom, and he goes, he's dead. He just.
Yep.
What?
Yep.
But
that's the kind of movie this is. The sequence leading up to that, though, where it's them getting Jimmy out of Jimmy's lab. That's fun. That was used. Some of that sequence was used, and that was some of the first footage I saw of it. They dropped that. I don't know if it was necessarily a trailer, if they just dropped a clip to promote it. That feels the most first-person shooter to me because you've got the sniper sequence when the guys are showing up. Oh, and you've got the punk rock Jimmy too, and that's fun. And he's just all of a sudden he's down there there's the punk music, and he's fighting the guys on the ground.
Yeah, because every time you ever see a punk rock guy in a video game, he's the melee guy. He's all up in their face and throwing punches.
I also enjoy that once it is like established what the deal with Jimmy is he can't control more than one at a time. So like he's up there with the sniper guy, the guy in the moss and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're sniping dudes, and he's like, "Hold on, I'll go down there and take care of him." And then he just boom, falls over. So anytime he switches avatars, the avatar just dead weight. Then you look down, and the punk guy's running around down there. And then I think he gets blown up, and the sniper guy's like, "All right, let's go." It looks very video gamey, very first-person shooter, but also that is an escort mission. You've had the fetch quest, you've had the racing mission. That is the escort mission because the World War II guy keeps yelling, "Don't let the cripple get below you." Make sure like you're always below the real Jimmy who's going down on an elevator. It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah. The guy in the ghillie suit, that's what I thought too.
Ghillie suit. I knew there was a name for it. The moss.
The guy the moss man. Every person you talk to that's done like first person shooters and always has that escort mission hates them.
Oh, they're the worst.
Kind of wanted to point out with that scene too was that right before he starts sniping the vans and the guy gets like the video game reticle where it moves around and he sees them. They point out that the guy is watching them through Henry's eyes. So then why is he still send the vans in to get just absolutely railed by these two snipers?
You know what? You're right. You're right. Like if they have a live feed through Henry's eyes, which that's a big spoiler, I guess. If they have a live feed through Henry's eyes, he's just sending these guys to die because he knows where they're at. He knows what they're doing.
Yeah. He also kind of in that building also kind of have like that, the siege movie type. They gotta get in, get out.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So the final sequence. Okay, so you've got a movie where it goes from insane like action sequence and set piece to set piece. So then there's always kind of the risk of like, well, the climax might not be great. In my mind, they did this well. I don't think the climax sequence is necessarily as interestingly set up as some of the other sequences, but it is so incredibly over the top and ridiculous and never ending. It just goes on and on. And I thought it was great. Watching it with Melanie, she's just like, are they done yet? Like, this is ridiculous. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Keep going. So there are other soldiers. Here's the big twist of the movie. His wife is not his wife. His wife is Psycho Mantis's wife. It's not really Psycho Mantis, but albino Psycho Mantis. He was basically a test run to see if they could basically pose her as an act, she'd just act the part as motivation for this soldier guy, this cyborg soldier. And I guess they decided that this was a success, so they did the same thing to this whole like army of soldier guys, cyborg soldiers, resurrected from the dead soldier guys. And then at the end sequence the end fight is basically Henry versus this army of soldier guys on this rooftop, occasionally getting tossed around by Psycho Mantis. What is his actual character's name?
I like Psycho Mantis.
Yeah, we're going to go with Psycho Mantis. And it goes on forever because he's just fighting these endless guys. At one point, they're all laying down. They all just get back up and he keeps fighting them over and over. And it goes on forever. And this is where the action does get jumbly, but it's supposed to. Like it's just going from like punch this guy, kick this guy over here, throw this guy off the roof, break this guy's arms, climbing up on the tower gets knocked over, fight these guys, literally a pile of guys just covering the camera, and then like it just keeps going. And I thought it was great. It's just so excessive, but we do eventually get the showdown, the big fight.
What was funny too, his name is Aiken. I remember it was because the corporation was like called Akano or Akano or whatever. But they even did like the video game RPG move where the final fight he brings himself up in the sky and like things are revolving around him.
Everything's like floating around.
I was like, second form, got to beat him again.
Well, and at one point Henry's about done, and he sees. They throw a health pack at him. He sees like a medical aid box hit the ground. So he runs up, pulls out 2 things of, I think they were adrenaline, and just does the whole like boom, zoop, power up, and just starts fighting again.
It's like the boss battle EpiPen. He's like, whoa!
The villain does do the thing where he's rising up in the air. Is that after Henry like wrapped the barbed wire around his hand and then grabbed his hand?
Yeah.
Because it seems like Henry's done. You actually do catch a glimpse of his face in a reflection. It's the only time you see him. But then he wraps some barbed wire around the guy, around his hand, grabs the guy's arm. And that whole thing is basically to like, because up to that point, he hasn't been able to get close enough to the villain to fight him because he's got telekinetic powers. But he manages to run up close enough and he grabs him by that. And the pain like kind of distracts the guy a little bit. And they both rise up into the air. But the part you're talking about where the villain is in the air, freaking out. How Henry gets to him is there's also like these dead bodies of soldiers floating that got lifted up with the debris. He jumps from soldier body to soldier body through the air. It's platformer gamer time, and he jumps to the guy, to the villain.
I almost thought it's gonna be what they call in a video game world is quick time events, where you'd have to hit like he'd jump on the first guy, you'd have to hit A in time, and then B, X, and then Y, and then punch him.
And it's gory all throughout. I enjoyed the end. It's very abrupt when it does finally end, but I like it. Usually you talk about a movie, you're like, well, the plot this, and I enjoyed this, and the cinematography that, and we did touch a little bit on like the editing and stuff, I suppose. This movie is all about that part where the guy jumped from body to body, hovering through the air, and then got to the other guy and used his eyeball stalk to rip his head in half. Like that's the kind of movie this is, and that's. They even did where his eye goes around his head. They actually filmed the whole thing going around his head, and then oh my god, yeah. I mean that's the kind of movie it is. Like you don't need there's enough story here to be fine. Like there's some interesting ideas, some interesting concepts, but it's clearly like it's a first person view action movie. It's not for that.
And then that guy goes through the propellers of the helicopter. That was
oh yeah, it's so over the top. It's not just that he like ripped his head in half, then the rest of him falls into the just gone.
What did you think about the last kind of scene with when he's in the helicopter with her, slams the door on her hands?
Oh, I like it. It's the perfect end, and it's so abrupt because she like falls out of the helicopter. She's hanging there after she shot him, mind you. And he's the whole reveal of like she's a villain too. She's one of the main villains. She's been misleading him, and she's hanging out of the helicopter door and like pleading for him to save her. And he just boom hits the door and it slides shut, and you hear fall, and that's the end of the movie. Credits, and I'm like, that's perfect. Just leave it there. It's good. He got revenge.
Mm-hmm. Because a lot of people bring up the fact that she saved him from falling, but he was like, nope, click.
She saved him from falling? What, earlier?
Yeah, remember, he almost falls out of the airship.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but that was when they didn't want him dead. They wanted he was the test. But at that point, they did want him dead, Yeah, it was cold. But dude, it's hardcore Henry. That's what hardcore Henry does. Hardcore things.
The one I was kind of laughing, but it also was kind of weird is when right before that, before he goes to fight him, he steps in that room and all of those soldiers are dead on the ground. Like all the ones in the black, like SWAT suits are just dead in that room. It's like, what happened here? Like,
yeah. I wonder if those were soldiers they were fighting earlier. That would kind of make it better if those were soldiers that they fought earlier and then that's who they used to like turn into the super soldiers, but I don't know if that's the case or not. I think the movie looks good too. It's got that kind of GoPro slightly fish-eyed look to everything, like you would expect, but the set locations are pretty cool. Some of the effects are a little questionable, but for the most part they look good. Like when Psycho Mantis randomly throws the stripper at Henry, like that whole thing looked pretty good. I'm sure there was effects there or fancy cutting. They accomplished a lot with the editing. I mean, it's not transparent, but I don't think it was supposed to. But they were able to blend sequences and shots together fairly well through editing. There was a lot of cuts during sudden head turns, But yeah, I think it's a fine looking movie. The fisheye lens look is always kind of ugly, but overall, I thought it looked pretty good.
Yeah. Like I said, it was kind of cool how they try to have Henry communicate with his hands or points at things really aggressively.
Yeah. You do get a good sense of his attitude a little bit from. They're a little exaggerated, but his hand movements, yeah, for sure.
Especially that one in the building that you sent me, where he puts the OK symbol up.
Yep. That World War II type Jimmy, I think he was the best. He's even at one point giving him instruction, He's like, you can't see them, but you can hear them. A grenade will take care, just that. I love that. That's so good. It's funny.
I think there's another part we kind of skipped over that I think should be mentioned was the little musical that went on with the avatars. That was just
why? I don't understand
nowhere.
It is out of nowhere. And the setup is so funny too, because he's like, we even have fun on our own or something like that. Like this kind of weird thing. And it's like, what? And then it kicks into this musical number. It's like, what? Yeah, it was fun. Where the Jimmy will fall over and then another one comes out singing and then he falls over and it switches back. Yeah, it was a good sequence.
I think that's where they just really wanted to show how they could easily edit in switching the bodies.
Yeah, it is a fun way to establish that that's how it works. I mean, they only really need to show it once and you get it, but this is a fun sequence that was totally unexpected. Do we want to do ratings on this bad boy?
Yeah, you take lead here.
All right, well, you're taking lead on the next one then for ratings. Hardcore Henry. I hated it. No, as you could tell, I had a blast. I was very curious about it. And I was looking forward to seeing it, and I think it ended up better than I expected it to. So I was pleasantly surprised. I thought it was a lot of fun. I give it a 4-star. I don't think it's it's not a perfect movie, but for what it's trying to do, I think it totally accomplished it, and it was a lot of fun. So, solid 4-star. 4 stars for Hardcore Henry.
Mine, I'm going to give it 4.5.
Woo! Yeah, okay.
This is for sure one of the movies I did not have my phone out because I was just sitting there watching it. I was like, Jesus, man, this movie's just crazy. But just on having the innovation just to do it totally first person was just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it is a solid 4.5.
Awesome. I knew you were going to like it. That's why I recommended it. As soon as I watched it, I was like, dude, you have to watch this movie. It's on Netflix. You watch this movie. Watch it. I knew you'd like it.
I also was going to say 4.5 because he did get a solid 5 because they never told us how he had telekinetic powers.
I like that they didn't. Although if he has telekinetic powers, why does he need these super soldiers? But whatever. I just like it. I like he's this crazy guy with superpowers. And it kind of establishes a certain tone of the world. For the most part, it looks like present day Europe or Russia or wherever they film this at. But they have sci-fi technology and they have dudes with telekinetic abilities. So, whatever.
Right.
When you establish that, to me, it makes the more over-the-top stuff, it's all right. I'll buy it. I'll buy into it. It's fine. It's over the top. But you know what? This dude can throw strippers around with his mind. And he fell out of a giant airship with a lab. So who knows what this world is? All right. I need to chug my monsters, keep this energy going. That movie is nonstop, too. It barely dies down. I think the slowest part is the opening scene where she's putting him together, putting his leg and arm on.
That little spinning thing.
So, we decided to follow up Hardcore Henry with Crank High Voltage, or Crank 2 High Voltage, from 2009. The overview on this one is, Chelios faces a Chinese mobster who has stolen his nearly indestructible heart and replaced it with a battery-powered ticker that requires regular jolts of electricity to keep working. Starring Jason Statham, Amy Smart, Dwight Yoakam. Dwight Yoakam, I think that's his first appearance on the Cinematic Universe. And Statham, for that matter. I'm sure they'll both pop up again. Efren Ramirez, and other people. Those are the main people. written and directed by Mark Neveldine and Brian Taylor. They have not gone on to do as much as I had expected. They've also done, they did the Ghost Rider sequel, Spirit of Vengeance, with Nicolas Cage. I never saw it. Speaking of Nicolas Cage, they also did a movie called Mom and Dad, which Melanie and I watched not long ago. It's fun. It's not great, but that's a fun, ridiculous movie. And I don't think I realized it was by these guys at that time. But now that I do know this, it totally makes sense. All right, Crank, High Voltage, the sequel to Crank, just Crank, also with Jason Statham. And this movie picks up right at the end of the first one, which I did not recall. I've seen them both, but it's been quite a while since I watched both of them. The end of the first one is he dies from falling out of a helicopter. The beginning of this one is he falls out of a helicopter, but he did not die. He was literally scraped up with a shovel off of the concrete and patched up, I guess. What did you think of this? Have you seen this before?
I think this is that. Sometimes I always think this is like the only Crank I ever saw, but because I remember a lot of parts of this movie that I don't remember any parts of the other one. It was very, very, very cheesy. The whole how he gets juice all the time, and it's like one thing after another. It's got that nonstop feeling too. There's a couple of parts that slow down, but like it's got that nonstop, just go, 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 go type thing.
Which was kind of the whole setup of the first one. In the first one, it was he was poisoned, and he had to keep his adrenaline up, I think, or something like that the whole time, or his heart would stop. So it was go, 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 go. And then this one, they did the thing where they swapped the heart out where he needs to constantly have it charged. And it is ridiculous. Ridiculous. I'm so conflicted on this movie. I actually recall liking this. I enjoyed watching this, but I had a more favorable opinion of it in hindsight than I did during the rewatch. I'm so conflicted about this movie. First off, it's trash. This is a trash movie. Like, this is pure exploitation. It's an exploitation movie. And I'm actually really surprised. I wonder how much this cost. This had a $20 million budget. So
I'm not surprised with that.
This is an extremely over-the-top, offensive, bad taste, ridiculous, on-mainstream-friendly exploitation movie that came out in 2009 from a big studio starring Jason Statham. Like, it's kind of amazing that this movie exists. And why I say I'm conflicted is because there's a lot of elements of this movie that I love. I think this is an ugly movie. I think it looks just terrible, but it kind of totally works for what it is. It's completely appropriate. The camera work is insane and horrible, but exactly what it's supposed to be. Once it gets towards the end of the movie, like, my opinion is just like, I'm enjoying parts of it. I'm hating other parts. But then once you get the gay biker group and you get the Mexican gang and the Chinese guys show up, everybody shows up. You've got a rubber head in a tank of fluid that's like, blah, saying things. And it's just, all this stuff is happening. And I'm like, I love this. This looks like something that came out of the 70s and a whole lot of drugs. Like, it's just insane. But I don't know, man. There's so much of it that's, some of the humor, it doesn't, I'd say be more than an action movie. This is a comedy, but the humor's real bad. It's all just sex stuff, and it's kind of lame.
Right. I haven't seen. Kind of made this joke to my friend was. You see more boobs in this movie than you see in a porno. Like,
yeah,
like it's that bad.
It's straight up an exploitation movie, and it's kind of surprising. And it's so weird because, okay, 2009 is almost 10 years ago now, which sounds like, 10 years ago. Dude, still 2009. I'm really surprised at how exploitative, is that a word? It is. There's so many needless shots of bikini chicks and topless chicks. Oh, the one chick gets shot through the boobs and the silicone's coming out, and
like that that whole scene, I was like, what is going on? Like, why does this have to be a thing on the scene?
And anytime there's a gunfight, because there's always like bikini chicks everywhere almost. Anytime there's a gunfight, they're the first to die. Even though they were just like running around being bimbos, they didn't have anything to do with anything. But that's and that's just the thing. But there's a lot of gratuitous. That's the word. There's a lot of gratuitous shots of bikini chicks and topless chicks that it's really surprising to me. And again, this feels like an older exploitation movie. If that stuff isn't an older exploitation movie, like I completely get it. But the fact that this is a 2009 movie, I'm just like, wow, I can't believe that they did it. I can't believe they got away with it. The first Crank must have made a whole bunch of money because they apparently could just do whatever they wanted in this movie. And I don't hate it. I don't necessarily hate all of those aspects, but it's jarring given the super like hypersensitive point in time that we're in now. So whatever, I can deal with that stuff. I'm used to like exploitation movies and stuff like that. The thing that really got me on this was kind of the racism. I was like, oh,
yeah, that was getting really bad.
Now realizing all the characters in this are bad guys. Jason Statham is not a good guy. He's a maniac. He's essentially just a mass murdering maniac running around, killing whoever's in his way, trying to get his heart back in this movie. But he is our protagonist, and he's dropping
really
racial slurs, like hardcore racial slurs that you typically don't hear anymore. And I'm just like, once I heard that, I was just like, oh, this is actually a little tough, man. This is tough to really get behind. I don't know.
Just like the over-the-top stuff, like the shotgun in the dude's butt was just...
That's the thing. Like, I appreciate what they're trying to do there. It is just straight over the top. That said, it's just dumb, and it's in bad taste. And it's not like I'm offended it's in bad taste. It's like, ew, dude. Ew.
Yeah.
You don't need to shove a shotgun up that dude's butt. Like,
it's in there, too. It's halfway in the barrel.
It's way in there.
It was like that. The Chinese girl that thinks she's like going to be with him and stuff.
The stuff she says, some of it's funny and some of it's like, whoa, what?
Yeah.
Why is she even there? What is she for? Why is she there?
I thought she was that one dude's like girlfriend. The guy with the full body Tourette's.
Don't even get me started on that guy. God.
I don't even what
that's
my
the
thing
movie.
is.
That's the movie. That's what it is. That's exactly. The guy with the full body Tourette's, the comedy, the comedic sidekick because he's got full body Tourette's and he might be gay.
We're a family. We're a family of freaks, but we're a family. I still love when that guy says that to him. It's so bad. I don't even know what to say in this review because
okay.
There's no real solid meaning to the movie.
And, I didn't expect it to stop us dead in our tracks like it has, but it's so hard to approach from a review standpoint. So I don't know. I will say, I think it's entertaining. I think it's butt ugly, but it kind of works. The camera work is insane. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure like this is that movie where they basically just grab cameras and they just like skate or wheelie around nonstop, just skate around the action nonstop and film everything like that. Handheld camera on skates and stuff. And it looks like it, but it kind of works. The sets are almost ugly, but I guess that's where it's at. Like, it's in warehouses and run down parts of town and stuff like that. But I think there's a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of fun stuff. There's just some insane over the top stuff. I'm trying to think of some standout moments. The final showdown is awesome. Oh, the big monster fight. For no reason. That made me laugh so hard. That I think might be my favorite part because so at one point, and by this point, he's like gone to grabbing onto high voltage, transformers and stuff to get his jolts. But when he finally chases down the guy with the little cooler that has his heart in, quote unquote, supposedly has his heart in this cooler, which is another thing that I kind of enjoyed. But he gets zapped, and then it goes into this Godzilla style monster fight where the set is a miniature and they're like rubber suits, but it's them, but exaggerated. And they're just bumping against each other. The camera will zoom up to these little toy people figures that are standing there. And just like, oh, and it zooms up to them. That, I lost it when I saw that. And then when it cuts back, it's just him on the ground beating the crap out of this guy. Just punch him in the face. Oh, man.
Did the high voltage turn them into taller people? Like, what? I'm
assuming it's just in his head, but I don't know. It's just an insane thing. And that's kind of part of what I like about this movie, that kind of insane stuff. And the end sequence where it's got the bad guy from the first movie is just a head in a tank with hoses in it. A very bad rubber prosthetic head.
Bringing the cooler up, I had a moment of what's in the box. What's in the box?
And they play. Oh yeah, me too. I was like, oh, this could have went with 7, but I kind of loved how he doesn't. You don't know what's in the cooler, but it turns out it's not his heart. Mm-hmm. And Jason Statham, who I kind of enjoy in this because he's Jason Statham's character. Like you buy that, yeah, he's kind of seedy. Like he's just got more edge to him in this than he does other stuff. But he looks in there and he looks into the cooler. He says, "What is that? What kind of sick freak carries around something like this in a box? I am shocked to my core. You've got some problems, mother. What the is that?" and that's it. And he gives it back, and Jimmy, or what's his name, Johnny, seems all like upset and traumatized.
Yeah, so I'm looking it up over here, and it says they believe that it's nipples from, because we're the whole nipple cut off thing. They believe it's nipples from another mobster.
Maybe. I did notice, and that was a jacked up scene, that the one Mexican guy has to cut his own nipples off. And then before he leaves the scene, I noticed he picks them back up off the ground and takes them with him. We don't see that guy too much after. No, I guess we do see him because he catches Chilios.
My name's Jeff Chilios. Today is the day I die. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing with 7. Other than we know it was kind of in the box of 7, but it was just like, I was like, what was in there? Like,
You know what was in there? A joke. That's what was in there. It was a joke. It was a MacGuffin, a mislead.
Mm-hmm.
And that the whole heart thing ends up having nothing to do with the actual, like, it drives the plot, but he doesn't end up getting his heart back. The doctor gets his heart back, and it gets put back in his chest post-credits, basically. The movie ends, and then we get, like, him getting his heart back after he's burnt to a crisp, which was a whole nother thing. We want to talk about the racetrack scene?
Yeah, maybe.
One thing that I think is very effective from a shock point of view is them blurring stuff out. Clearly, those two were not actually having sex on camera. But if they're bottomless and you throw the blur thing over where you're assuming there's penetration, it's very convincing and it is shocking. It's just like, wow, it actually does kind of look like they're having sex there.
Like, I almost wanted to, but did watch it. I'm like, are they actually having sex? Like, I was going to look it up in trivia, but I'm like, I don't want to know.
Here's a perfect example of the kind of thing that I hate, but is so accurate if they're trying to do like an old exploitation movie type thing. They're doing the wheelbarrow pose thing, right? And it's a little funny because he's actually like stepping and walking. But then it cuts to a guy who's actually got a wheelbarrow who I'm assuming is watching, and he starts humping at the wheelbarrow, and I'm like, nope, no, stupid. But that is exactly what you'd see out of like a 70s or 80s sex comedy.
Oh God, I just found out that when he runs through the mob of porn stars, the extras are actually, other than Ron Jeremy, but actually are other actual porn stars.
Oh yeah, of course. That's why they're there. They even had the drop and loads guy.
Yeah, what was it? Oh yeah, that was another thing I want to point out to you, and this was Corey Haim was in this movie.
Oh yeah, who was he?
He plays Randy, the guy with the mullet.
Oh, I didn't even realize.
I didn't even recognize him in that.
Why was that guy even there? Why was he even necessary?
Right.
What does that add?
Although I will say that the camera work and like a lot of the chase scenes was really good. Also, I was kind of wondering on the bridge when the lowrider challenges him to a race. Like, why would he come up and want to race that vehicle? Like, it's like an old town car. Like, you know, he's like, I need direction. He's like, nah, man, let's race. Like,
now I've said the movie's ugly, but that's one of the highlights is how it's done, like the style. It's ugly. The frame rate is crazy and kind of like almost choppy at times. It does the crazy stuff where the camera's just like zooming around people and it'll actually like reverse frames and stuff. But like, I think it adds to it. It adds to the insanity. What got me thinking about it though is that scene where he's driving next to the lowrider and then he hits a median or something, but he's just suddenly hits something and flies out the windshield. Like that type of stuff is super well done because he's just driving and all of a sudden, boom, through the windshield. And then like the camera's in front of his face and you see him and he's just like skating across the concrete on his stomach. Like, like, whoa,
what the hell just happened?
What did I just see? Yeah, I enjoy how it's made. It's rough. It's rough and tumble, down and dirty movie.
Yeah. I sat there the whole time and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to say about this movie.
In it, right off the bat, not just the like him hitting the car and hitting the concrete and then them scraping it up, but like you get into the surgery scene and it just sets the tone perfectly in terms of what you're in for. Sets the tone perfectly. He's getting operated on. The one guy comes in and ashes his cigarette in his open chest, on his heart, and his open chest cavity. Then he hawks a loogie in there. At one point, they drop some type of a surgery tool down in there, like clamps down in there, and they never pull it out because I'm like, I seen that and I was like, oh, they better get that out of there. And the whole time, Jason Statham's awake and like he looks worried, like he sees that fall in there and he's like, huh, you know, so,
right?
And then you know he finally breaks loose because they're gonna remove his other important organ, and it just sets the tone for what you're in for. Based on my previous viewing, I'd only seen this one other time. I expected another conversation like we had during Hardcore Henry, where it's just like, oh, and this thing, and then this thing. Oh, yeah, man, that was crazy and over the top. But then after I watched this, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to say.
Yeah, right? Like, it was just so cheesy. The cheese was like a Kraft factory full.
I don't mind the cheese, and I don't mind some of the attempts at humor. God, I have no idea what I'm going to give this a star rating. So what I enjoy, there's the aspects I enjoy. I like it stylistically, even the just insane stuff where it went to like a talk show with Chelios as a little kid on this talk show and just showing that he was always a bad dude. He was a criminal. I don't mind that. That's goofy, but you know, whatever. It's kind of fun. The random, you know, occasionally do a split screen and just the random camera work. And I liked all that. I liked it stylistically. The monster fight, I love that. I like the over-the-top action. Some of the gore, they cut that one dude's elbow off.
Sushi.
Oh, that really bugs me. I was like, oh, that's real. I don't like that at all. Like, why that?
Oh, it makes my elbow hurt.
Like, it's almost worse than cutting a dude's arm off. I mean, not in reality, but in the movie, you're just like, you expect an arm to come off or something. Not just skim part of the dude's elbow off. Like, that's weird. Well, that's weird. Anyway, but I can handle all that. And I love how just the general over-the-top scenario. Like I said, that last sequence. But I hate sex comedy stuff, especially dumb sex comedy stuff. And that's almost all of the humor. Like, the movie doesn't waste any time at trying to shove as much dumb sex comedy stuff in as possible. Just every chance it gets. Right. It goes out of its way to put in cutaway scenes to characters that we will only ever see this one time to make a joke about a white man who has a big penis. Like, why? Why is that there? Why did you take the time to make that? It is pretty mean-spirited, which is fine, but like the racism is kind of like out of control. It's kind of out of control.
There's things in that movie we cannot repeat.
It's not just having that stuff in a movie, because I don't know, you're used to bad guys calling Mexicans certain names or whatever, stuff like that. But when you've got the lead character who's supposed to be kind of the protagonist, even though he's not a good guy. He's not even an anti-hero. He's just another villain, but he's the guy we're following. When he's just says as bad as stuff as everyone else, dropping homophobic things a lot, like just makes for a weird tone, makes for a weird thing to watch.
Yeah.
You're like, man, I really want to enjoy this, but this is also kind of difficult. Anyway, yeah, that's my general thoughts. What's your star rating on this, sir?
I am going 3 out of 5. The action sequences were good to watch, kind of crazy, but just the side oddball stuff kind of turned me off of it. Heavy saturation of just useless shots, I want to say is what I would call it. But yeah, 3 out of 5.
Okay.
What you got? What you think?
I don't know. This is tough. 3 sounds
Too high?
it sounds too high, but lower sounds too low. Because I did enjoy this movie. I enjoy what it attempts to do. I enjoy what it got away with doing.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot I don't enjoy. I don't enjoy the just dumb sex comedy stuff. Like I said, I think more than an action movie, this is a comedy, but the comedy's bad. But
Ooh, man, you really have to think about this one.
I do.
I feel like you're going to go 2.5.
I'm really debating. It's 2.5 or 3 because I do enjoy it. There's some great stuff stylistically. Can I go 2.75? 2.8 not yellow. Okay.
If I can't do 3.9, you cannot do 2.8.
And then I think about other stuff, and I know I've given movies that are far less entertaining and far less inspired 3 stars. So, oh God, I'm going to go 3 stars. It really kind of feels to me like I should go 2.5, but I'm going to go 3 because there's some entertaining stuff. Stylistically, there's some good stuff. Most of it I enjoy quite a bit, but the stuff I don't enjoy, I really don't enjoy. But I'm impressed with what they got away with. Some of the stuff that, I'm glad they got away with, just the overall insanity. Some of the stuff they probably shouldn't have got away with. I'm still impressed that they were able to do it. Like, who greenlit some of this?
Like, she got away with the overall insanity, but not the overall racism.
The racism is the part that really... No, it all blows my mind that they got away with it, but the racism is just like... I'm not so much shocked with the stuff that they tried to shock you with. I'm shocked that they were able to do it. Yeah, I'll go 3. I'll go light 3.
3? Okay.
3 stars.
3, but with a little part of the shiny gold star, not nothing there, not colored.
It's fading.
See, I told you that's an actual rating.
But on the website, when you go look, it's going to be a solid 3. So,
well, unless you edit it, a little dark spot on the just is like the evermost tip of the star.
That's the only one I'm ever gonna. That's the only rating I'm ever gonna apply that to. Next episode, you're gonna be like, "Hey, can you do that to mine?" I'll be like, "Nope, I can't do it. Technologically impossible."
It's a one-off.
I had to pay for a plugin to do that, and it only works once.
$99. I had to pay that for just that right there.
So Jasper, the movie studios are in need of some just non-stop action. The superhero movies have amped up everything just to 11. So they need to take it further. They need to amp it up to 27. So they picked up the rights to Crank and Hardcore Henry. How can you combine the Crank, High Voltage, and Hardcore Henry into one cinematic universe? My readings are getting weird anymore, I think. Into one cinematic universe. How about that?
I like the little shake there.
Cinematic universe. Oh, that's totally different.
Sounds like some narrator from the 70s. Cinematic universe.
Welcome to the Grawlix Cinematic Universe. Like that.
Oh, so do we have scenes for this one? Do you have you have nothing?
I did not write this out. I did not plot this out like I have been lately. Here's my reasoning. Because I don't believe the writers would plot this out like that. You go first. You go first.
Like,
I went first
Henry,
last time.
We got Statham.
They're just gonna run at each other.
There's your movie.
They're gonna run at each
there's
other.
There's the movie.
Statham's going to call people some F-bombs, not the one you're thinking, and they're going to run at each other.
So mine was, I believe that what we're going to find out is that Chelios was a prototype. He's the prototype, right? So Crank 2 is his origin story. And then he is refined into what is now Henry. So basically what I'm saying is Chelios is Henry.
Chelios is Henry. Like, is he a soldier like Henry, or is he Henry?
No. So he gets burned in Crank 2, and then he is basically Darth Vader rebuilt into Henry. But they can't call him Chelios because he'll remember, so they call him Henry.
Okay.
So then that goes into, he takes, I forgot, what is it? Or was it Kano? Kano was a corporation in Henry.
Yeah, I don't recall, but okay.
And the Triad owns that company. So he's going back after them. And then he meets Jimmy and all that.
Okay.
Basically, I was trying to figure out a way that Chelios was Henry. And then the next one after that would be him going back after the Triad with his now soldier mind, body, and soul. After this one, because Crank threw me way off, was I wanted to start doing the one where you do like the seed and stuff. So I gotta work on that. But yeah, it's just Crank 2 kind of left me with little to work on.
So after the end of Hardcore Henry, he's shot. His plane's going down. I'm assuming who's flying that helicopter, by the way, because they're not paying attention to nothing. Anyway, and his battery pack is low, so he hits the ground. He decides, screw it. He's got to try to get this battery pack charged. So he grabs onto he finds a transformer and amps him up. He's got no Jimmy to help him out, to patch him up anymore. So he finds some doctor, some skeezy second bedroom operating room doctor to patch him up. That doctor looks suspiciously like Dwight Yoakam, country music sensation.
Oh my God.
So it's pretty easy to put Hardcore Henry and Crank universes together. It's pretty much done. I mean, they have the same problem. Their battery pack that fuels their heart is dying. So they have the exact same problem. So I'm thinking it'll either be a combination of, I don't think it'll be a team up. Maybe it'll be a team up, but then something goes wrong and it becomes Henry versus Chelios. But they've basically, even though Chelios got his heart back, there's going to be some other issue. I mean, he's burnt to a crisp. There's going to be some other issue where he's still got to amp himself up. We're going to have two dudes just chasing after each other and going on fetch quests and fighting each other. And they've constantly got to like electrify themselves and shoot themselves up with adrenaline and just get amped up. At one point, there's going to be a live television sex scene or something like that, because the Crank movies, you gotta amp it up, because the first one there was like the sex scene in public was, I don't remember what the setup was, but I remember the racetrack scene was like amping that up. So we gotta take that to the next level. Oh, you know what, here it is. What about this? So that's one movie. We'll do like a team up, like they're fighting each other, and then they end up like befriending each other, and they have to fight somebody else. That somebody else they have to fight is the girlfriend or the wife from Hardcore Henry, who herself had a very Crank high voltage situation where she fell out of this helicopter, hit the ground, somebody scooped her up, put a fake heart in there, so she's got to do the thing, and it's just all three of them they're just fighting. So that's the conflict.
I thought you were going to use the other F word there. But
they're all
just
fighting. Yeah. They're just having a super brawl. They're just banging around in cars and slamming together bad guys' skulls. And
I was like, are they all have the heart? They all have to have like a threesome to get all the friction done.
You know what? That's the climax of the movie.
I see what you did there.
They all have to, like, they're fighting and they're all three about to die because they're like all low power, and then Chelios is like, friction. And they're just like, oh, and it's kind of begrudgingly, but then they all agreed to do it.
Henry just, that's what it says in the text. Henry just nods.
Yeah. And how this movie will go is anytime we're following Henry or Henry's in the scene, it's his point of view. But if anytime we're following anybody else, it's just insane camera action, constantly circling around, handheld camera, jerking about, skating by. At one point, the action is happening, but it's like the camera operator just like kept skating down the street.
Oh my God. Oh man.
But Statham and the doctor end up having to run to Europe. That's how they come across Henry. They got out of the States. No, correction. Statham, the doctor, and the doctor's girlfriend, who he calls Chocolate, but she looked like a bad and she didn't get to do a whole lot, but she did chase the one old Chinese guy down, so she's going to be in it too, doing cool stuff. And Statham, I kind of thought about the angle of like Statham's girlfriend. What's her name? She's played by Amy Smart. Eve looks kind of like the wife from Hardcore Henry, but only in that she's blonde-ish. But I was like, maybe we can combine those characters. Nah, we won't do that.
That's what I thought of doing too, was even Estelle.
Changed her name
Eve-Elle.
to Eve. Oh, she changed her name to Eve, got hooked up with this one guy. So the movie is Jason Statham is trying to find her while she's trying to get revenge on Henry. And it becomes like a weird love triangle.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's how we're doing it now?
Yeah.
Is that locked in?
Yeah. That's
man.
what's happening now. Why do you think they burn up Chilios?
I'm not too sure.
I did enjoy that, like, he's burning. There's water everywhere. And instead of putting himself out, he has some weird delusional kiss. They set the one Chinese lady on fire. Like, she ends up running away on fire. I'm like, they did not treat her well. She's a bad character, but they did not treat her well. But then instead of like putting himself out, he just turns to the camera and flips the audience off. And I was kind of like, yeah, I enjoy that. But part of me is like, Statham is like, this is the last one, guys. So if you plan on making any more, figure out how to do it without me. And now they can just darkman him. Just darkman him. Just, he's a raps. They don't need Statham. It could be anybody.
Did you see at one point in the movie they point out he's the guy from the transporter?
Yep. Super fun meta comment. I like that.
He's the transformer guy or the
they said train spotting too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how well our review of Hardcore Henry is going to come out, but I don't know how else to talk about that movie. It's just, it was exciting and I wanted to talk about the cool stuff. Hey, we'll be back in 2 weeks with more movies.
Woo. Woo.
And then in October, we're doing horror movies.
Horror-thon.
It's going to be a horror-thon. Yes. I'm excited.
Sounds horrible when you say it.
We'd be doing horror movies this week and all through October if I had my way. Hey, Jasper, who are you and where can people find your stuff?
My name's Jasper, and you can find my stuff in my home.
Oh yeah, go to his home, find his. He has stuff. He has stuff you want. That's what you said. I'm Randall Silvey. You can find me at Randall Silvey on Twitter. It's RANDALSILVEY. Also on Facebook, you can find me at facebook.com/Randall Silvey Podcaster. On Instagram, at Podcast Producer. Yeah, boy, that's me. Also, you can find Grawlix Podcast everywhere. You can find Grawlix Podcast at Grawlix Podcast. You can find Grawlix Cinematic Universe at GCU Podcast on Twitter. Grawlix Podcast and GCU are mixed into one on Facebook. Facebook.com/Grawlix Podcast. Instagram.com/Grawlix Podcast. YouTube.com/Grawlix Podcast. GrawlixPodcast.tumblr.com. And GrawlixPodcast.com. And Pinterest.com/Grawlix Podcast.
Pornhub.com/Grawlix Podcast.
Nope. Somebody's probably squatting on. Ooh, I should not. I need to watch my wording when we talk about Pornhub. What I mean is somebody's probably camping on that username.
That was the wrong word, man.
It always happens. I can't help it.
Man.
Things people say, the terms they use for sex, I can't help it. I'm just saying words. They're the ones that made it a double entendre.
Oh, I got the full visual thought in my head when you said that.
Oh, I don't even want to know. All right. That's it. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Grawlix podcast and the Grawlix Cinematic Universe. Did he do it again?
He wanted to. He hovered a bit.
Maybe he's like,
oh, he's coming up to the window, checking it out, and then bouncing down now. What the
maybe he's like one of those Christians in South America that like hurts themselves for penance, like flails himself. Maybe he's just throwing himself into the window to pay for his sins.
I had impure thoughts. Bonk.